Welcome to Community with Closers. I'm your host, Pat Clark, and this is where closers are born. Get ready for high-energy stories, game-changing strategies, and the relentless pursuit of success. In each episode, we dissect the art of sealing the deal, celebrate triumphs, and explore the grit that defines salesmanship. This is the ultimate podcast for sales warriors ready to conquer the business battlefield. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Community with Closers. Tonight, I have an amazing guest for you doing a whole bunch of cool stuff. Doesn't live far from me, and it is amazing to hang out with this dude. So I don't want to, further ado, let's introduce my man, Mike Claudio. What is going on, dude?
Dude, you've had some ballers on this thing. Like looking through your little intro highlight, you got some strong characters coming on here, man. Like you've done a great job adding value to the point where people want to help you. So congratulations to you on that. Because I think it's so cool. Because it's not easy running a reoccurring live show like this and bringing on continued valuable people. And so that ain't easy. And you did it. So that's pretty cool.
I appreciate that, dude. And hey, dude, you are one of those guys that we have on here. So I'm super pumped that you've actually, wanted to be on here. It's been a wild ride. That's for sure, man. It's definitely not easy, but it's a blast doing it. Get to really know people on a different level,
For sure.
So dude, I want to jump into your story a little bit. I know you got a lot going on. You are impacting thousands of people. I had the honor to hear you speak, actually. You're the one who helped me create my dream board, me and my wife. I got to hear you speak at Hunter's event. That's where we actually met.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's speaking has been a really great journey for me. Because when you first start getting into speaking, people don't realize that you're communicating for a living always. When you're in school, trying to make friends, trying to date, you're always communicating. And I just found a knack and an enjoyment of communicating to groups of people. And my career started in corporate America. I was in B2B sales for 9 years. I was in retail management, B2B sales. I worked for Verizon Wireless for almost 9.5 years. And I carried 7 different positions there. And I learned so much about harnessing this, what I would consider bubbly personality that I carry. And I learned how to harness it. And I learned the value of it. Ultimately, what led me to leave Verizon was recognizing that I was 25, 26 years old, making 150, 160 grand a year, realizing that I was worth more than that. When I left Verizon, I was in the enterprise sales world, and I had 8 clients doing approximately $35 million a year in services with Verizon.
Nice.
And I'm making 160 grand. And I'm that math don't math to me. If I'm worthy of managing that much revenue, I'm worth more than this. I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but that's what led me into the construction space and ultimately taking my sales and sales leadership career into the service industry. And so in 2013, I left corporate America, joined a buddy of mine who was a very small remodeler. I think he did 300,000 in gross sales the year before I started. So I left a $70 billion company and went and worked for a $300,000 company and helped him grow his company pretty substantially. We basically 10x'd in 2 years.
Dang.
We went from my almost third year there. I was there for about 2.5 years. We did just under 3 million my second year there. So
Dang.
Learned a lot of lessons. And what I learned there was I took the sales professionalism from corporate America and then learned I took over sales, marketing, and estimating for a kitchen and bathroom remodeling company. I didn't know anything about the industry. And over the course of 6 or 8 months, taught myself how to build a vendor list, taught myself how to build a price sheet, taught myself how to build the estimate, taught myself how to sell the value of different features, taught myself how to market and grow the company. And I had skill set to talk, right? Talking and communicating was my skill set. I have YouTube videos from 2014 I did for the companies I worked with. I've been doing content before content was a cool thing to do.
Isn't that crazy to think about?
Man, that was, 10 years ago, I was creating YouTube content. And people are oh, Mike, it's easy for you. Screw you. 10 years.
Accurate.
And so went for the remodeling company, then So for the remodeling company and then the roofing company, I was a key employee. I was not an owner. And I didn't deserve to be. I came from a corporate background. I didn't really understand it, but like the remodeler kind of capped out. He wasn't really interested in growing much more than he was at. The roofing company, him and I, he was one of the subs of the remodeling company. And we kind of knew each other well, kicked it off, and kind of hit it off. And when like he was trying to grow and needed somebody to take over sales and marketing for his company, he had 5 reps at the time. They were probably doing 2 to 3 million. And came in, was president of sales and marketing, did some stuff with the team. My second year there, we did 6 million.
That's crazy.
And like broke both companies, outsold both companies. Like I personally sold $3.8 million in roofing in 2018. My team did the other like 2.2. I'm very good at that thing. But what I was missing and what I know, like looking back with what I know about now about coaching companies, like those were both terrible positions to have. Like those leaders were not built to scale. And so now, like, so 2017, I started helping people because I like helping people. Helped a couple companies scale. I didn't know what coaching was at that point, like from an industry and career perspective. 2018, I'm like, because like I haven't told this story a lot. I think you'll appreciate this. A very, very large percentage of my income was on commissions on sales, right? So every sale, I made more money. When I started coaching other people, consulting other people, they were just asking me questions. I wasn't seeking it. People were seeking me. I realized I'm spending all this time helping people. That's not making me any money. I knew enough at that point to know that like I need to monetize my time. And I haven't told that story a lot. The reason I started monetizing coaching was because I was losing commission sales on that time could have been dedicated to selling.
Yep.
Right? Like, you know how that goes, right? Especially if you own your own business. When you're not selling, you're not growing your income. And I knew enough to like capitalize on the time. I've always been a stickler for time. Like, you know me as a stickler for time, right? Like I am very, very disciplined in my time. So even then, this is 2015.
Got you back.
Dude, the power at my house went out.
Oh, shoot. Dude, we've been getting some storms.
No, we got crushed today. It went out earlier, came back, and it just went off again. So I'm outside, but the power went out. All right. So I knew back then that like how the importance of like monetizing my time. And I was like, I got to find a way to monetize this. So in 2018, I started the WinRate LLC. And what my goal was to make an impact with every conversation I have, one conversation at a time. And I remember my first client that paid me for coaching was one of the first hires I made a project manager at the remodeling company. He went out and he left the remodeling company when I went to the roofing company, started his own remodeling company. He's like, Mike, I need your help to grow this. And so that was my first paying client. I think he paid me $500 a month for 3 months. And I met with him every Sunday. And like, you ain't getting that price anymore. I'm just like,
I was going to say, you ain't getting that price.
Yesterday's price is not today's price. And so that's where it started. And I hyper focused on my community in Charlotte. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I hyper focused on that community of people who knew me and knew what I was doing, knew what I was accomplishing. And then I started going to events, started speaking, started getting clients outside of my region. And here we are 6 years later. We got 100 clients spread out throughout the whole country. I got 8 coaches on staff. We got 15 employees, and we'll do several $1 million.
Dang, dude, that's epic. That is epic. And it's crazy how that works because, you know, you're putting yourself out there in the beginning and it's all free stuff. And it's, I mean, you can speak truth to this because when people pay, they pay attention. When you give
Agreed.
free advice, you're like, dude, why aren't you doing what I'm telling you to do? They just don't execute.
Well, and the reality is the more I've charged, the better results I've gotten.
Yeah.
Because you know what, when you don't charge enough for it to matter, people treat it like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't value it the same. And so there was some imposter syndrome early on, like raising prices and fear of, like, everybody, like, raise prices, lose clients, like, raise prices, lose prospects. But you know, the reality is I had to. It was in everybody's interest for me to because I can hire employees, build the mission, help more people. And so, but yeah, no, people who pay attention is a very, very true statement.
Yeah. Well, that goes into what we want to talk about tonight because as we dive into the sales aspect, right? Like we have to value stack our businesses, ourselves as sales reps. And so you pretty much did that. You value stacked yourself, right?
Yep.
To become, you know, WinRate, an amazing coaching program. So with salespeople, you know, for people that are listening, they're, you know, raising their price. But right now, you know, people are feeling the crunch too. You know, July kind of hit a lot of people a little harder than anticipated, I think, this year. And you always have to go back. I always say you got to go back 30 to 60 days before your slow times. You have to be tracking your ebbs and your flows.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of put, you know, a perspective on that with that sales, because we ultimately are a sales company that just happens to do exterior cleaning, electrical, whatever.
Yeah. So there's I'm going to answer this two ways, and one's going to lead to the other. You know, one of the best lessons I ever heard that changed my success in sales, the biggest. This might be one of the most impactful pieces of advice I ever got, and it was when you're closing the most business, you have to prospect the hardest. Because a closed deal is just as impactful to your pipeline as a lost deal. It is still coming out of your future pipeline. And so the ability to keep consistent revenue over time, when you're a sales rep and you're closed, you have a great month closing, you have to up your prospecting that much to match the increased sales to refill the pipeline. People say, I'm busy closing these contracts. Cool. In 45 to 60 days, you're going to be busy doing nothing.
That's right.
And so it was one of the most impactful pieces of advice I ever got that related to me maintaining very successful and consistent revenue and sales targets was when you are closing the most, you have to prospect the hardest.
Yes.
And like that right now, people are having a bad July because they struggled in May and June to do the work. I'm not judging them, but they probably prospected hard in Q1 because they were slow. They were going to the networking events. They were doing their phone calls. They were doing their follow-ups. They were doing their content stuff. Got busy, right? In April, May, June, stopped doing those things they were doing in January, February, March. And then guess what? July is a dip month. The summer is always a hard month, specifically with home service stuff, because people are traveling. They're not home, right? COVID kind of spoiled us a little bit because no one went anywhere. So there was no like dip in the summer season. But yes, like and so it leads me to the question we were talking about earlier, like when to hire a sales rep. And I'm going to say the way I say it, and it might not sound right, but we're going to unpack it, is when you get too busy to do the work that got you busy, it is time to hire a salesperson.
Amen.
When you're too busy to do the work that got you busy, it is immediately time to hire a salesperson, or you're going to stop momentum, right? If you did a really good job selling, really good job prospecting, and then you stop doing the things that filled your calendar, when you go do the production side of your company, you're not putting effort and energy into the sales side by just sheer hours in a day. You don't have the time, and you are immediately decreasing the momentum of your company.
Yes.
And so you're like, but Mike, how do I do it? Well, the reality is hiring a salesperson is not a lifelong decision. You can fire somebody if it doesn't work. Like I deal with this with people doing millions of dollars in their company. They're like, I'm like, dude, this is a 60-day test run, not a 12-month salary risk. Like if they're not doing their job in the first 60 days, we get rid of them. This is like, you're not gambling 12 months of a salary. You're gambling 2 months of a salary.
That's right.
And with salespeople, like typically it's no or small or moderate size salaries, so it's even a lower risk if they're not producing, right? But when you realize that there is filling the pipeline and emptying the pipeline need to happen at the same pace, right? Like if you close 3 deals this week, if you didn't add 3 deals this week, your pipeline was negative.
Yeah.
Right. And so I always wanted to create every week, I wanted to create a net positive growth to my pipeline. No matter how many deals I closed, I wanted a net positive. If I closed 3, I needed to add 4 to the pipeline. Right. And if you maintain that mindset, as an individual producer or a service provider, you ain't got the time to close 3, go provide 3, and then fill 4. And like you have to take the risk at some point of hiring a salesperson to be able to help you create that net pipeline gain.
Yeah.
And a net pipeline gain could be a low hanging fruit or a moderate hanging fruit, but like get them in the pipeline, right? And if you can maintain that consistency of a net positive pipeline gain, your company will grow forever. You might have ebbs and flows of the year, but year over year, you'll grow.
Yeah. That's
right?
a huge mindset shift for people, like net positive. Like, whoa, I didn't think about that.
Well, and like when I learned this, like probably 14 years ago, I heard this for the first time. And it was a closing a deal is just as bad for your pipeline as losing one. Because that's like your pipeline is not your targets. Your pipeline is a representation of your future results.
Yeah.
And so closing a deal today creates the same negative impact to your pipeline as losing one. And when I had that perspective shift and I had a killer closing month, like there was one month I closed like $500,000 in roofing projects. I prospected the hardest I've ever prospected that month. And that's how I got to 3.8 million that year. It wasn't because I got lucky. It was because like over the course of a few years, my approach and my mindset changed about how I'm managing my pipeline. Yes. Was I celebrating sales? Was I making great commissions? Yes. But I did not allow myself to fall victim to the ebbs and flows of feast or famine, because every month, I wanted a net gain to my pipeline. If I win 2 and lose 4, I need 7 new opportunities in my pipeline.
Yeah.
And if you look at it that way, it requires effort every day. And like people overestimate the effort too. Like I would send 20 DMs a day. I did that when I was pooping. Like that was my pooping activity. Right. So like I capitalize on every minute, man. Like I try to squeeze every dollar out of every
I'm still working.
I'm still working. But it was quiet time. It was quick. I knew who I was targeting, knew who I was following up with, and I had a game plan. I would sit there and like I wouldn't the death scroll was like if you death scroll social media, this was a trigger I helped a lot of salespeople with. You are not allowed to scroll social media until you send 10 DMs. That's the fee to giving you permission to scroll social media. I'm not saying don't scroll social media, but don't get on and don't just get on and be a user.
Yeah.
Like I haven't consumed social media in a long time. Like I deleted social media from my phone probably 5 months ago.
Nice.
I only use my computer for it. It's a business tool. And it's changed the way I've shown up for my family. It's changed the way I've shown up in my life. It's changed the way that but like I still scroll sometimes. I want to go see what my clients are doing. I want to go see what you are doing. Like I care about people.
Yeah.
But I don't give myself permission to scroll until I use social media as a tool to grow my brand first. And so I'm commenting on posts. I'm sharing stuff. I'm posting in the stories. I'm DMing some people. And then I give myself permission to enjoy it for a period of time.
Yeah. And that goes back to your time, like you protect your time. I love that.
Well, it's people talk about, no, I want to be in sales because I have uncapped potential. And then they want to work 30 hours a week. Like, that's not the same thing, man. Like, that's not the same thing. But even like looking at like a lot of these like lower ticket environments, right? Like electrical services, power washing. These are low ticket or lower ticket environments. The reality is understanding you might have to drop profits for a period of time to get past the ceiling you're at.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big your company is. You're like, oh, dude, I have 25 million a year. I won't have this problem. Yes, you will. I've seen it. I'm a part of it. forever and ever, when you want to go through a growth season, you have to mentally and emotionally accept a low profit environment. Because every employee you hire is based on a return on investment of that employee. Well, the ROI might be 6, 8, 12 months. You got to be willing to eat shit for 6, 8, 12 months, or you're just going to keep hitting the same ceiling and wondering why you can't get anywhere, why you're stuck at the 500 grand a year or the 1.1 million a year or the 3 million a year. No matter what that ceiling is, until you're willing to invest and go through a low profit season, you're not going to break through. There's not going to become this like magical fairy where you don't have weather this year, where it doesn't rain and you're not impacted, where you don't have equipment go down. That's never going to happen. You get through seasons by investing in people.
That's right.
And you create a very clear path to an ROI on every hire you make. I tell every hire I make, my goal is to get a return on my investment in you. If I don't see that happen, I'm going to fire you.
Yep.
Like, that's part of my interview process.
Yeah.
Because that's the truth.
Yep.
The truth is, if you hire them and they ain't get you an ROI, you need to let them go. And you might be the problem. You set them up for failure. You didn't train them correctly. The comp plan wasn't right. The leads weren't there. Like, you might be the reason that that you're not getting an ROI on them, and you still need to fire them, and you need to tell them it was your fault and you're sorry.
Yep.
But you still got to let them go.
Yep. And then learn from it, and then you hire again.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, man. And like every hire gets better. The power just came back on.
Nice.
Every hire gets better. Every interview gets better. Every mistake turns into a lesson. But again, those are low profit seasons. You're losing money. Like last year, I made a commitment to build a leadership team in charge. So there's leaders in place, leaders in charge. So leaders in place are people who are in a position to execute a task. Leaders in charge who are people who are in a position to make decisions. So I was on a journey last year to build a leadership team in charge. I lost $250,000 last year on mistakes my team made.
Ooh. Dang.
But I have a leadership team in charge right now.
Yep.
I can step away from my business for 6 months and it would continue.
Yes.
And I wouldn't. It cost me $250,000 to earn that right.
Yep.
And I wouldn't change it for the world. I don't have to own any decision in any department anymore. I'm still a part of it. I'm in the meetings. I'm doing one-on-ones. Like, I'm not completely out of it.
Yep.
But I could step away right now and the business would maintain.
Love that.
And so but that cost me a lot of money.
Yep. But you knew it would, and it serves your why.
100%.
Yeah.
But hiring salespeople, like you have to be willing to hire 5 to keep 1.
Yeah.
Like salespeople are hard, man, because like it's hard to interview. Like there's definitely best practices, but like it's hard to nail one down. It's hard to if you've never hired a salesperson, you're going to suck at onboarding and training them.
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to learn? There's not a YouTube video out there that's going to teach you how to onboard and train a salesperson. You just got to do it.
Yep. And
that's the confidence, but that's also the desire of I want what's on the other side of that challenge more than anything.
Yeah.
That's the mindset shift, right? So when you're selling, it's like that prospect you follow up with because you want that job so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you're willing to because that job's just so worth it. Like same thing with employees. You got to be willing to follow up and do the job and train them and get uncomfortable and decide you just want to build something.
That's right. Yeah, and it goes back to so in sales boost times before I sold it, of course, but sales boost times I was I read an article and it was if you put the people in place, the money will come, and I was like, dang, it just hit me right at that moment. I was like, I just need to hire people because it was scary. I'm like, how the heck am I going to afford to pay somebody? And this was 15 years ago, $600 a week. I'm like, that's my paycheck. I'm like, holy cow, what am I going to do? But when I did, you grow 30% and then you learn from those lessons. And when you level up yourself, your business changes and your mindset changes. But like you said, Mike, it's I was never a manager before. I was never a sales manager before. I learned sales not by any teaching, just by doing, by going and talking to customers, seeing their eyes light up, you know what I mean, for the buzzwords and stuff. So I created a buzzword list. So everybody has a system. So if you're watching tonight, Mike is dropping some amazing nuggets. It's dive in because you're going to learn, have a basic system. And like you said, like they can go to, YouTube or, come, little places to get some basic sales stuff, like have a weekly meeting, maybe 2 weekly meetings, you know what I mean? Where you're touching base with that sales rep. There's a lot of things you can do just off the rip. But like you said, I'm like, dude, in my interview process, I'm not babysitting. We have a proven system. You follow the system
Yeah.
and execute.
Well, and look, part of it is too, like you said it perfectly. I don't want to hire employees to stay at the same size. This is a mistake. I can't afford them. Of course you can't. You're not hiring them to do the same work you're doing now. No,
Yeah.
whether that's an admin, an assistant, a GM.
Oh, shoot, we lost you. Darn it. So he lost power, and then he's out on his cell phone right now, which is oh, we got you back, bro.
Well, I think what happened is the power came back on. My Wi-Fi router turned back on, but the internet's not back connected yet, so my phone connected to the Wi-Fi. I promise I'm not an idiot. Like my power is just flickering on and off. I promise.
No, I'm with you there. Our power went off too at my house. I'm not far from you.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's you're not hiring anybody to stay the same size. So saying I can't afford them now, of course you can't.
Yep.
That's not the point. It's what is the return on the investment of that? And sometimes it's like I'm hiring that assistant or that office manager, and the ROI is I'm getting 40 hours a week back to go sell more. That's the return on investment of that hire. It's the hours I'm buying back. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell is a great book. If you haven't read that yet, it's a great book. And so it just really talks about the concept of buying back your time based on certain calculations. His calculation is if you can spend 25% of your hourly rate to do something, I'll always pay somebody to do it. So if you make $100 an hour, if you can pay somebody $25 an hour to do it, you should do it 100% of the time, because your time is 4 times as valuable as the activity you were doing to do it. It doesn't, right? So buying back your time on that, what is the ROI? The ROI is putting those hours towards something else.
Yep.
Right. And so, but in sales, it's hiring those salespeople. It's hard if you think it's going to be easy. You're going to have, there's going to be turnover. People are not going to work. Salespeople are hyper emotional. They're very needy. They're very they need a lot of reassurance. Salespeople they're challenging.
Yes.
The alternative is you're stuck selling forever.
That's
right? What's harder?
Yeah.
So
they got to make that choice. And sometimes that business owner isn't a salesperson. So they really need to, they're like, oh, you're on Social Security. No problem. We'll do payments, right? No, it doesn't take org at the end of your website. You need to hire somebody that's going to make you profit at the end of the day.
Well, so do you know who Brian Gottlieb is? Does that name anything to you?
No.
All right. So Brian Gottlieb built $150 million construction company. He built a system over multiple states that was bathrooms and windows were his 2 things. He owned 2 giant window companies. But he said something on a call I had. He did a talk for our client base, and he said, my goal was to hire somebody in a position better than me and then go find them a coach that was better than them.
Ooh.
Because I can't make that person better. And a lot of people all the time, they're like, hey, do I need to build SOPs for this person? Not if they're better than you, because any SOP you develop for that person, if they're better than you, it makes them worse from day one.
Yeah.
And so Brian, he sold it for over 100 million. This dude built the thing. He just has fun now. And he invests and does all this angel investing stuff. But he said this, and this changed my perspective on hiring. He said his goal was to hire people better than him and then go find them a coach that was better than them.
That's gold.
And that investment gets your company to $100 million. So if you've never hired a salesperson, right? Hire the salesperson, then hire Pat. Pat can train your salesperson for 90 days. You don't have to. Boom, you have a high performing salesperson.
Yeah.
That's worth let's call it 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand. It doesn't matter what they're paying for it. It's worth it because without it, you're constantly failing and starting over.
Yes. So let's jump into Mike because we got a couple minutes here left. So I want to talk about real quick some tracking and some scorecards for salespeople
Yep.
because once you get a salesperson, you're like, great, he's making sales, but am I really making money? Is he really closing deals? How do I track this person?
Yep. So I'm gonna walk through everything I think about this. So I like looking at how can I reverse engineer the machine. So I look at conversion rates at each stage of the process. So I'll look at qualification rate is the first one. How many leads do we get? How many appointments did we get? That's my qualification rate. That tells me if my marketing's working, if my networking's working. Like, are we getting good leads? Because if I get 10 leads and only 3 get appointments, that's 7 leads that we wasted time on. Like that were just not good leads, right? And so I want to look at qualification rate. How many leads do we get? How many appointments do we set? I always tracked appointments completed, right? So like we set the appointment and it actually happened.
Yeah.
Right? Because people cancel, people no-show, people forget. Like a lot of things happen. So we got X amount of leads. We qualified this amount in. This is how many we actually met with. I want to look at all 3 of those numbers. From there, I want to look at how many people got a contract. And I always had an upsell requirement. How many people were attempted to be upsold? And we had a process for tracking that in our estimating process, like as part of the proposal. It would be like primary service, secondary service. Secondary services was my way of knowing that was an upsell attempt.
Yeah.
So what percentage of proposals include upsell? And I looked at it this way. If you can train a McDonald's person to say, do you want fries with that? And I can't get my like $100,000 a year sales guy to say, do you want this other service with that? You ain't worth it, bro.
Yeah.
So I tracked upsell opportunities. Close rates, obvious. How many contracts do we send? How many do we close? I also looked at average ticket size was something I tracked because I wanted to reverse engineer how many sales we would need to get to a certain revenue number. And I can track at what point in average ticket value did our close rate drop? Because this is a fear, right? How do I raise prices?
Yeah.
Well, hey, when we were at I'm just use round numbers. Hey, when we were at $250 per ticket, we were at an 80% close rate. When we went to $400 a ticket, we dropped to a 45% close rate. Right. So, hey, at $325, we were at 75%. Boom. We just increased pricing by 30%, only dropped to 5% close rate. That's the math I need to see. Right.
Yep.
And so people say, well, how much do you track? I always tracked 10 to 20, depending on like your world and how often you quote stuff. 10 to 20 proposals at a price point is what I base my data set on. Because you can always go back to those 10 or 20 people like, oh, man, I misquoted that. Or, hey, actually, I could do it for cheaper. You can't sell them at $250 and go like, hey, I had everybody said yes to $250. Let me try to upsell them to $325. You can't do that. That doesn't work.
Yep.
But I can quote 20 people $400 and come in at $325, still get my 30% increase that I need for my profitability. So I would track that. Like I would track average ticket size and close as increase. What happened to my close rate?
Love that.
So there's one thing I'm missing. That's the big, because that tells the story. So if I know my average ticket, I know my close rate, I know my upsell rate, I know my sit rate, I know my appointment rate, I know my lead rate. I can quantify exactly because like it. Oh, this is what it was. Appointment to revenue. This is important. Appointment to revenue. So I can look at how many appointments do we have this week. If you know for a fact that like you sell a project today and you typically collect the revenue 10 to 14 days later, right? How many appointments I have this week? I can tell you, I can project how much revenue I'm going to have in 2 weeks. I love trying to project revenue based on, and it could be contract sent or lead or appointment made. Like you can say, hey, I know from the time the contract is signed to revenue collected end of project. Like I get some custom home builders. That's 190 days.
Yeah.
Right. So I can right now, I can say, if you sign a contract today, I can tell you what your revenue in 109 days is going to be.
Yep.
So in pressure washing, the same way. If you're typically 2 or 3 weeks booked out, if you know contract to revenue is 3 weeks, every week you can say, how many contracts did I sign? That's my revenue 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
And you can project expenses, you can project investments, you can project a lot of things by understanding your days from contract to full revenue collection. I think it's a really important metric to track.
Even hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
No,
sure. Yeah, if you're like, oh, I know our typical contract to production 6 weeks. We had 2 straight weeks of 200% sales from our target. I have 4 weeks to hire people, or we're going to get blasted.
that's right.
100%.
Dude, that's gold. That's good. So there you guys, there you have it. I mean, that's it right there, dude. I appreciate that, Mike. That's a lot of gold for these guys to execute on. These are things, guys, on Community with Closers that you can literally take away tonight and implement tomorrow. Like today is Wednesday. You got 2 more days. Try it. Try to increase your pricing. Try to have an upsell program. Like these are things you can do now, practice, become really good at it, and then hire somebody and train them on how you do it.
And look, guys, if you have questions, like I'm happy to help, man. Shoot me a DM, shoot me a voice note. Like Pat knows, like I want to help people. Like shoot me a DM. I'll do what I can through voice notes to help you back. Like I want to provide some value on this because action creates results. Not thought, not planning, not thinking about it, not strategy, not testing. Action creates results. Like go try something new tomorrow.
Yes. So where do they reach out to you, Mike?
So if you, we're on, I think Facebook. So like, if you just want to go to Mike Claudio on Facebook, I'm at The Real Mike Claudio on Instagram. If you go to MikeClaudio.com, it has all my links and stuff from like my podcast and YouTube channel and stuff. But I'm Google Mike Claudio. I'm like, you'll find me.
Nice.
It's a really douchey thing to say, but you can Google me now, and you're gonna find some way to contact me. Like,
love it. There you go. All right, bro. Well,
awesome.
I appreciate you again, like always, man, hopping on here and bringing the value. I got to get over at your podcast one of these days for sure.
For sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll get that one planned in person.
Sounds good. Oh yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Well, appreciate you, everybody. Have an amazing night, and you better execute. We'll see you guys on the other side right here. Community with Closers. Talk to you later.